Hello, welcome to the third video for A-Level Economics Theme A, Theme 1. So let's get straight into it. So in this video, we're going to be talking about renewable and non-renewable resources. So what is a renewable and versus non-renewable resource? So natural resources are essential inputs for the productions of goods and services. Economists often categorize them into two main types. We've got renewable resources, which are resources that can regenerate and be used sustainably, and non-renewable resources, which are finite and deleted when consumed. Understanding the economic role of these resources is crucial for analyzing issues such as market failure, sustainability, and government intervention. What this means essentially is that there are two ways to produce goods. We've got renewable ways and non-renewable ways. Renewable ways are more sustainable and better for the economy, whereas non-renewable ways are also good for the economy, but they do not replenish and they are quite costly, especially to the environment. So what are renewable resources? Renewable resources are those that can be replenished naturally, meaning that they can potentially be used indefinitely if managed irresponsibly. For example, solar energy, which is basically limitless and it depends on sunlight, wind power, which is clean and sustainable depending on wind conditions, forest and timber, which is technically sustainable as long as the trees are being replanted. If not, it does count as non-renewable resources. So the economic importance. So provide long-term energy security and lower environmental damage. Encourage innovation and investment in green technology and can reduce dependency on imported fuels. Improving a country's balance of payments, promote sustainable growth by ensuring resources remain available for future generations. In essence, the economic importance is very crucial for renewable resources. Renewable resources provide long-term energy security and lower environmental damage. This obviously turns up and leads to investors more likely to spend money in the economy, which in turn reduces dependency on imported fuels, making the overall impact positive for consumers. However, renewable resources have drawbacks. They have high initial investment costs for infrastructure, such as building wind turbines and solar panels, and they lack supply. So intermittent supply, where renewable resources depend on weather and other stuff such as sunlight. So some renewable resources like fish stock can be overexploited if mismanaged. So non-renewable resources are finite. Once used, they cannot be replaced. Examples include fossil fuels, oil, coal, natural gas. Primary examples of global energy and minerals and metals, copper, gold, aluminium, are vital for industry and technology. So as of currently, this video is being recorded. Currently, the entire economy depends on non-renewable resources, since non-renewable resources are much easier to produce and technically they can produce more if used correctly. So that's why most people go for non-renewable resources. A lot of businesses use this in order to cut back costs, which in turn leads to lower costs for consumers when buying products, and it benefits them and increases their profits. So there are problems with non-renewable resources, such as resource depletion. As supply dwindles, extraction becomes more expensive, such as deep sea drilling, and there is an environmental damage when burning fossil fuels, which contributes to air pollution and climate change. And alongside this, there is price volatility. So geopolitical tensions and supply constraints cause fluctuating prices, which in turn causes a resource curse. And countries that depend heavily on resources exports can suffer from lack of diversification. So, market failure and resources. So, the use of both renewable and non-renewable resources often leads to market failure, where free markets do not allocate resources efficiently. Negative externalities: Fossil fuels use generates pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, harming third parties. Tragedy of the commons. So common access resources such as ocean, forest, and atmosphere are often overused because no one owns them. Alongside this, there is information failure. So consumers may underestimate long-term environmental consequences, and the effects of merit and demerit goods, where renewable energy tends to be underconsumed, leading to a positive externality, while non-renewable energies are overconsumed, which lead to a negative externality. So I understand this is quite a lot to take in, especially for your third lesson. I'm sorry, but let's simplify this. So the use of renewable and non-renewables often leads to market failure, where free markets do not allocate resources efficiently. So what is a negative externality? Let's talk about externalities. So an externality is the cost to a third party that happens outside a transaction. So assume me and Bob are two parties that are going to buy stuff. So I am the seller, he is the buyer. Let's say I sell him a economics textbook for £5. Although me and Bob technically gain from this transaction, the cost to produce that book does produce negative externalities, because trees are cut, stuff like that, and the people that are affected from this is the people outside the transaction. So me and Bob made a transaction, and those people, let's say people living near these forests, may see a lot of trees being cut down as a result of me doing this sale. So these companies might start cutting down more trees to fuel the demand of these economics textbooks being sold. And then we have tragedy of the commons. So common access resources such as oceans, forests, atmospheres are overused because no one owns them. So the government doesn't actually own, well, sometimes they do, but typically the government don't own these oceans, forests and atmosphere. So it's open, and businesses like to come here and just use these resources. And then information failure. So technically the consumers may not care, and they may underestimate the long-term environmental consequences. So when Bob bought that textbook, he doesn't realize that the long-term consequences of me selling these textbooks could be cutting down trees and leading to less clean oxygen in the air, which obviously damages everyone's health. And then we have merit and demerit goods. So renewable energy tends to be underconsumed because people are not willing to pay that extra cost, while non-renewable energy is overconsumed, where people don't mind cutting costs in order to, consume these goods, which leads to long-term environmental consequences. So government intervention. So when we see a lot of businesses abuse these markets in order to cut costs, so they might start cutting down trees to sell books, going into the ocean and taking a lot of fish, ruining the coral life, so the ocean life within the oceans. And in order to correct this market failure, governments may intervene in several ways. There are several ways governments can do this, and one way is carbon tax. So this is a tax that makes polluting activities more expensive, which in turn makes businesses more likely to go towards the renewable energy resources. Because if they're going to be spending, let's say, 200 million a year to get this coal and burn fossil fuels, they might as well just invest into solar panels and stuff like that, which may cost them more in the short term, but in the longer run, they'll be saving costs. So that's why someone might say carbon taxes may work. Another way the government can support these businesses is through subsidies. So encouraging adoption of renewable energy grants for solar panels. So essentially paying these companies to just switch over to renewable energy, which in turn benefits the overall population. And another way is regulation and quotas. So regulation is something that just limits a business, and then quotas is like the total amount that's limited. So governments could set emission limits, limiting fish quotas to prevent overexploitation. So businesses are just illegally not allowed to do this. So just setting laws to tell them stop, otherwise we're going to fine you or potentially take legal action. And then trade permits is basically caps and trade systems allow firms to buy and sell pollution permits. So businesses might have to buy pollution permits. So let's say I buy this land, that means I can pollute, let's say, I don't know how much, this is going to be weirdly inaccurate, but let's say they emit 200 gallons of CO2 each year. So these caps and trade limits can just prevent businesses doing that. And if they do want to pollute more, they're just going to have to find someone who's selling it and then buy another permit. And also they can assign ownerships of resources to prevent overuse. So this is just property rights. And then public investment. So governments can directly invest in renewable infrastructure, as private firms may underinvest due to high costs. So essentially, basically subsidies, they just support these businesses by telling them, hey, we're going to invest into this piece of land. If you guys want to buy some, we're going to give you renewable energy, blah, blah, blah. So let's evaluate these policies. So why, you might think, okay, so we're going to do all this limiting and preventing these businesses. Why is this not going to work? So taxes effectively, in theory, so technically they do work, but it depends on demand elasticity. So the willingness for consumers to buy. So if they raise consumer costs and politically unpopular, people are still going to buy them regardless of the increasing price. So let's say water. Let's say if these people want to buy water, and obviously water maybe they're depleting the oceans, etc., etc. They can increase the cost, but consumers are still going to buy because they don't have any other choice, which in theory isn't going to work. They're still going to be polluting in order to meet demand for that water. And then subsidies. So they can support renewable but place strains on government budgets and may lead to inefficiencies. So, yeah, this obviously costs money if I was going to subsidize a business to invest into renewable technology. And regulation. So, this provides certainty but may reduce competitiveness if firms face higher costs. So, businesses are going to be less competitive. So, across the world, let's say if the US starts putting regulation, firms are going to face higher costs in essence. This will lead to, let's say, China is going to export more because other countries are just going to stop trading with the US and just switch over to China so that they can save more money. Another way is tradable permits, so flexible and market-based, but difficult to design effectively. And then we have a combination approach. So in practice, governments can use a mixes of taxes, subsidies, regulations, and all of these for the best results. So that's the end of the video. Please complete the Google form in the description if you want to practice and test your knowledge. And that's the end of the video. Thank you. Bye.